And I've got a CIAT panel moderator and assessor who does the stage 1 and 2 reviews called Barry LeBeauvant, who's going to come in a bit later to the presentation and give you his perspective on what he would like to see. Presentation should take about 20 minutes to half an hour. Please raise any questions in the chat box as I go so that Barry and Megan can answer them. Moreover, I may well come to what you're asking of us in due course. But first of all, we have our joining and qualifying structure, and the highest professional qualification we offer in the discipline is to be a chartered architectural technologist with the designate MCIAT. So that's the gold standard. That's what everyone's aspiring to achieve, and that's what we're here to talk about today. Before you get to that point, you do need to be registered as an associate member or a CIAT affiliate to submit your professional assessment application to begin the qualifying process to become a chartered member. Now, how long it takes for you to qualify depends on you as an individual. You know, how long is a piece of string? If you're a recently qualified graduate with limited or no experience, we generally say you're looking 3 good years experience to potentially be ready to submit a professional assessment application and meet the competency standards within our framework. However, if you've been working in industry for 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, one could argue that you've got all the evidence, you've got all the experience, you've got all the competence you need. Therefore, the issues affecting your progression are time, energy, and motivation to fill in the application form, put together a professional submission so that a panel of chartered members can make a judgment as to whether you've met the application criteria. So CIAT is here as your lead professional body. We represent you. We're your collective voice, and there's lots of different advantages and benefits to being registered and involved with CIAT. Most of you all signed up as an associate or affiliate already, and the primary objective most people see the benefit is to get that chartered qualification, to get the professional recognition, to help you move on where you want to get to in your career. So we're here to talk about the professional assessment. So that's the route that most applicants take to qualify to become a chartered member. Now, the standards to qualify changed on the 1st of May this year. So they're now known as the Professional Standards Competency Framework. So if Megan hasn't done it already, she was kindly going to share the links in the chat of this meeting. Moreover, everybody that got an invite to the meeting would have received a copy of the 2025 Competency Framework. Now, hopefully you've had a chance to review that and consider that, and it's broken down into 3 stages. So stage 1 is what we call educational standards. So this is assessment of your knowledge and understanding and theory of architectural technology. So the good news for some of you is if you have a CIAT accredited honours or master's degree, you will be exempt from stage 1. Now, by being an associate member, that means we recognise your level of academic qualification for that level of membership. It doesn't automatically mean you have a CIAT accredited honours or master's qualification. Most, if not all of them, have architectural technology in the title. And if you're not sure, you can check with us or you can check on the website as to whether your academic qualification would lead to an exemption from stage 1. If not, you need to demonstrate an equivalent attainment of knowledge, which I'll come to on my next slide. Stage 2, we call the practice standards. So this is an assessment of your work-based experience. It's a portfolio of your competency and your experience. And there's 4 areas defined within the competency framework, which we term designing, managing, practicing, and developing self. And again, I will come on to what that consists of and what you need to demonstrate. Now, stage 1 and 2 are done through completion of the professional assessment application form, and you submit those for review before you're then potentially invited to fit your stage 3 professional standards assessment interview. And again, there's another slide on that further on through the presentation. But through this process, it should enable you to become a chartered architectural technologist, which is a recognised standard of excellence, which benchmarks your knowledge, skills, experience, competence, and professionalism. So, stage 1, for those of you who are not exempt, there's 11 criterion, 11 topics that you need to answer. And the way to demonstrate an equivalent knowledge and understanding is to answer each of those 11 criteria with a written narrative. So to back up your knowledge and understanding, you can refer to other academic qualifications or professional qualifications that have imparted your knowledge on each one of those 11 criteria. You could refer to CPD or training courses. You could reference literature or articles that you've studied and digested and are able to convey your suitability to meet our knowledge requirements. But the easiest way I've found people to do this is just answer each of the 11 topics with a written narrative, and where applicable, back it up with supporting evidence. Now, the thing to remember is there is a word limit of around 3,000 to 5,000 words, plus or minus 10% for your complete answer to those 11 criteria. So if you work on the basis of around 300 words per criteria, you should be well set to enable you to demonstrate your knowledge and understanding of our requirements to qualify in architectural technology. Now, stage 2 is your work-based portfolio, and experienced members generally find stage 2 easier to complete than they do stage 1. So within here, in the areas of designing, managing, practicing, developing self, which are defined clearly in the framework, and we've cut out those definitions to put on the slide here, that's what we mean by those 4 topics and those 4 experiences. But within the competency framework, designing will have D1, D2, D3, D4, D5. Managing will have M1, M2, M3, M4, and so on. And each of those competencies are quite prescriptive, and they should give you a steer on the expectations of what evidence you need to provide to prove those points. But you also need to contextualize that evidence with a narrative so that the people that are going to review your application are going to understand the relevance and be confident that you've justified that these documents prove your competency in that specific function. Now, similar to stage 1, there's also a word limit in total for your whole written application for stage 2. And again, you're probably looking at around 200 words per competency standard, but the competency standards need to be backed up with supporting evidence, and the supporting evidence of what you've actually done on projects and what you've delivered and what functions you can provide and the outputs you can give are what will enable us to determine you're competent to pass stage 2 and move on to the next stage. Now, the scope of an AT is ever more diverse, it's ever more wide-ranging. Some of you might be fulfilling the traditional role of a technologist, you might be working a smaller practice, you might be a job running technologist, so you might provide evidence from client brief through to handover and completion. You might specialise in academia or digital construction, therefore your portfolio and scope of evidence might be a little bit more niche, but it's down to you to use the written application in the professional assessment to contextualise your experience and justify how you meet each of our competency requirements to qualify. So all of you can qualify, albeit you might do the full range from work stages 0 to 7. You might just get involved at stages 4 and 5 and dip into stages 3 and 6. It's really up to you to pull out and put forward what you think is relevant. We'll assess every application on its merit as to whether we feel it's met our competency requirements. There's a nice bit of flexibility and fluidity to suit your career and your area or areas of practice. So depending on your realm of practice, that might really mold the type of evidence you might provide. So if you're a BIM specialist, you can provide a full suite of evidence to prove those points. However, you might specialize in historic building conservation. So one of these areas, a few of these areas, or all of these areas of roles and functions and experiences you can bring into your application. The greater the depth, the broader the breadth of your application. So the more different building typologies, the different projects you've worked on, the stronger your application, because you're adding more layers. The more layers of experience you've got, the more competency you can tick for your application. But what molds the type of evidence you provide will be the practices of organisations that you've worked for or the client base that you service and deliver projects for. So if you're a healthcare specialist, that can form the whole realm of your application to become chartered. However, if you've worked on educational projects, retail projects and residential projects, it would be good to bring facets of each of those into your professional assessment application, because there'll be different experiences, different client requirements, different statutory obligations, different contracts that you're working within. These all add value to that breadth and depth of the application that I'm talking about. So before I move on to stage 3, I'm going to give Barry a chance to give you an insight on what guidance he gives to the people that he mentors to become chartered, which are probably in the hundreds, if not thousands at this point, Barry, as well as what he looks for in your stage 1 and stage 2 application to become a chartered member. So I'll let you take over now, Barry.
Yeah, my name's Barry Le Bavant. I'm a former president of the Institute. I've been in the construction, whilst I'm now retired from the industry, I'm still involved heavily with this business. So I've had 54 years coming up to within the industry, so I'm pretty experienced. And as James says, I mentor and I assess. And this year alone, I think I've probably mentored over 150 people and done at least 200 assessments. Now, what we expect from you, an AT, even if it's not an area you touch on at work, an AT is expected to have knowledge of a project construction from conception to completion. Now, you will come across some of the bullet points where you think to yourself, well, I'm not involved with that. Well, you need to complete the narrative of your knowledge of that, but you need to point out that as I'm not involved, I do not have the evidence for that area. The application is nothing to be scared of, because it's a diarisation basically of your working day. In section C, you need to don't just put down, oh, I design buildings and do half a dozen bullet points. Put in as many bullet points as you can. That I make planning applications. I provide the documents to accompany those planning applications, things like that. What else can I say? You don't need hundreds and hundreds of drawings either. We expect to see all across the board evidence. So it's drawings, it's large scale details, it's schedules, it's meeting minutes where your name is on the minutes to show your attendance of the minutes, letters and correspondence with clients, other staff members, other professionals that are involved with projects, job trackers, CDM regulation documents and risk assessments. You are all expected to have a knowledge of contract, whether you work in it or not. And if you are successful in being put through to the interview, you're likely to be questioned at interview on contract and the risk assessment CDM regulations. But we'll talk about the interview later on. I think that briefly covers it. And other than to say that if anybody needs some help, James will pass on my details for you, and I can help mentor you if need be. I think I'll leave it at that moment.
Yeah, we can leave it in that for now, Barry, at that. But yeah, the key thing I would say to remember is in the application form of the professional assessment for stages 1 and 2, the specific bullet points are embedded onto the form. So please don't delete those. Please make sure you address those, and please make sure you provide evidence to demonstrate you're ticking all the competency requirements, because once it comes to the assessor, it makes their job a lot easier to look at your narrative. Has he addressed D1, D2, D3? Right, I like what they've written. I need to look at the evidence. I'm happy to verify that, yes, they've demonstrated to me that they're competent. So stages 1 and 2, you get 3 opportunities to pass what we call the panel review. So once you filled in your professional assessment application, you're happy with it. You do need to get a referee who needs to be a qualified professional to sign off your application. So it sounds to me like Barry's just put himself forward to mentor potentially another 50 people. So you can email me or Megan to get Barry's details and we could do the introduction. But you can appoint your own referee to sign off your application. So a registered architect, a chartered surveyor, chartered construction manager, a chartered engineer. You know, there's a long list of qualifications we accept to act as your referee. They just need to say, I feel this is an accurate and true reflection of this individual's suitability. I've seen the evidence, or I know they've got this experience. I'm happy to vouch for it, and you submit it to CIAT. So it's £375 to do the whole qualification process, 3 opportunities to pass stages 1 and 2, and then 1 opportunity to sit stage 3, which is your professional interview. Now, once you submit your application for stage 1 and 2 review, we will review that against the competency framework, checking that you've provided evidence to meet all of the requirements in the framework. Now, it might be that your first submission, there's some areas of clarification we require, or there might be areas where we feel there's insufficient evidence to back up your statement or insufficient evidence to prove you're competent. So we might say, right, we've looked at your application. However, for D1, M1 and P1, we need to see further clarification and or evidence of the following points. So that's called your first deferral. So it comes back to you, we give you feedback, and then you look at your application again, you refine it, you evolve it, you add more, you send it back to us for a review again, and we'll look at your stage 1 and 2 portfolio again for a second review. Hopefully you pass, you move on to interview, but again, we still might say for D1, we need further clarification and or evidence of these points. We still don't feel you've met the criteria. So it'll come back to you for a second time, and you can resubmit that for a third and final review for your stages 1 and 2. So you get 3 chances to pass the stage 1 and 2 portfolio review. And it's very rare that someone doesn't pass by that third time review. So around 65% probably pass first time round, and it goes up to about 95% after the second review, where you send it in for the second time. So we'll then invite you to professional standards assessment interview. Again, within the framework, there are 8 competencies that you need to be able to verbally convey and demonstrate with your peers and communicate in an ethical and professional manner at your interview. These are primarily held via Zoom, because people tend to find that's most convenient to fit around all their other commitments in life. However, there is also the opportunity primarily come to CIAT in London to have it in person, which is also popular. And it's a 45-minute discussion based around what you've written in your application. So if you've given a factual and honest reflection of your capabilities and your competence and your experience, this process is relatively enjoyable for most people. There's no need to bring a portfolio to the in-person one. There's no chance to present your portfolio at a Zoom interview because it's already been pre-approved. We take our assessor's view on it that this is acceptable. And the decision will go one or two ways. So the pass rate at the moment for this year, 91% at interview. So we feel you're strong enough to sit your interview if we invite you, and the vast majority will pass and qualify as a chartered architectural technologist. However, some 10% will get a referral. So you get verbal feedback on the day as to what came across as deficient. We'll write to you within 10 working days with the areas that you need to brush up upon, and say, if you so wish, you can reapply after a minimum of 3 months just to sit your stage 3 professional standards interview again, but it will come at a cost of £225. So there is still feedback and guidance to help you develop if you don't meet the standards at stages 1, 2, and or 3 through this process. So it's a collegiate effort to help you get to the standard, to help you improve, because we want you to be chartered members and we want you to be flying the CIAT flag. In time, if you get your chartership and you're a principal of your own business, whether that's full-time or part-time, paid or unpaid, you can become a CIAT chartered practice. That's a free benefit of your chartered membership with CIAT. Just as a side note to everybody in the room, if you're registered as an associate member, you shouldn't be offering private services out to clients directly to market, whether it's paid or unpaid, full-time, part-time, unless you're registered with CIAT and you've registered your practice details and you need to become an affiliate and not be an associate with CIAT. So that's something you probably want to get your house in order before you come and sit your professional standards assessment interview, where it's about ethical and professional behaviour. Because if you're not in compliance with the code when you come, then it could be a reason to say, well, this individual doesn't seem to understand their professional obligations and the expectations of the institute. So you can become a chartered practice if you're a principal and you run your own business. And moreover, if in time, once you get to chartership, there is the fellow membership, which complements your chartered qualification. So that's based on individuals that can demonstrate significant contribution to and or excellence in architectural technology. And if you've done something so significant or so excellent, there will be a tangible impact of that to show the ripple effect of how you've influenced change within the sector. So that is a pretty much a whistle-stop tour of the professional standards competency framework, the professional assessment application process. But this is really a chance to ask Megan, Barry, or I any questions you've got from the floor or in the chat box. So I will stop sharing my screen